Hello there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of URC Unloaded, the penultimate week in the URC. And as always, delighted to be joined by Tom Hungover Shanklin and John Barkley,
Hold
who's
on,
in New
hold on
York.
a minute. Hold on a minute, mate. Now, if you want to start this podcast or this vlog, whatever you call it, you've got to start with a bit of energy. You were like on autopilot then. You're like a robot.
Yeah.
You got me.
Let me
You got
finally
to go
chat.
from there. If you want to
Do you
become
want me to
presenter
start
like your
again?
best mate
Yeah.
Tommy Bow,
Okay.
but you want to become you got to fake it, mate. Come on,
10
give us a bit more.
siblings.
It's better. This is
Hello,
better.
everybody. Welcome to a new episode of URC Unloaded. I'm delighted to be joined by John Barkley and, of course, Tom Shanklin. Well, boys, how are you getting on anyway? What's the last week held? John, you've been doing a lot of traveling. Shanks, you're off the back of a 4-day golf trip. Are you fatigued, tired, energetic? How's the mood?
I'm a bit tired, but it's semi-final week. I'm excited. I'm in New York City of all places, so I am. I've been wandering around with myself. Big Jim Hamilton's in town, so I caught up with him yesterday for a couple of glasses of wine. Got a little bit carried away. You ever been to the Box? That weird
No.
club. Oh well, maybe not one to talk
Is that
about
where you
here.
get tied up?
But it's weird. Like they do really weird stuff on stage.
Like Manny Mission
Right.
in Ibiza.
I don't know. Just Google afterwards because we ended up in there and it wasn't the right place for us.
You're gonna get in trouble now from your wife if she's listening, because I know she
Yeah,
does.
she's a big fan of the show. To be fair. But no, I'm good. Other than that, lads, I am. I'm looking forward to coming home. I'm flying direct into Shannon this weekend just to make semi-finals.
Oh, John, you're gonna have to have some coffee, aren't you? You're gonna be on the coffee. You're gonna be like me when I was in Belfast.
No, I mean that's
Ulster, Leinster. You walked me to get an ice cream. That's what I'm gonna have to do to you in Limerick, isn't it? I'm gonna have to hold your hand and take you to the ice cream van and give you 5,000 calories in food to get you up for it.
I'll tell you, the food here is big, lads, in New York.
Yeah.
Portions, man. Jesus Christ.
Speaking of calories, Shanks, how many calories have you consumed over the last week? I know you were on the golf course, drinking a few beers, eating a few Mars bars.
You're looking big.
Mars bars.
Yeah, you
That's
are
old
looking
school,
big,
mate.
mate.
I'm old school to
Looking
you.
big.
Clothes are looking tight.
How many I don't think there's many calories in Summer B lager, cider. So I think I'm all right. Oh, guys, I'll be honest with you, right? I've just crawled. I'm like a little mole that's just crawling out of his hole now, and he's put his head above the ground, and he can see the light. It's been tough, mate. But look, you guys were doing the quarterfinals in Glasgow. Stevie, you looked very sharp, a lot better than Ragass United of John Barkley. And
What are you on about?
you just looked like you'd picked all the clothes out from PE, the PE bin.
Stop.
You and Wilson.
Those are
Fez looked sharp.
You got 2 polo shirts, mate. Bring one of them this weekend. We know which one's going to
Fez
be.
looked sharp. But I was away with work. We were raising money for charity for the Cardiff Rugby Community Foundation, and we did around 25 grand. So that's why I was missing last week. But it's sort of his work, really. 4 days of golf in Villamora. You got to buy into it, lads. You got to buy into it. All in. I went all in. Put all my chips in. First day. That's me.
Well, me and Ryan Wilson were speaking at a dinner on Friday. You like this, Shanks. So we got invited to speak at St Andrew's Hospice, Children's Hospice, really good charity. And this woman contacts us. It's the annual golf day for this construction company. Would you come down? We get there, and within 2 minutes, we realise it's a room full of Rangers and Celtic fans. Not one person's watched rugby, and you should have seen Ryan Wilson go.
Good.
Talking about all the things you shouldn't talk about, Rangers and Celtic, and just like and just go. And I was like, mate, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. Absolute shite.
He was some boy. He turned up to Scotstoun and he had a white t-shirt on and an overshirt. And JB, what was it, 5-6 degrees maybe? And it was lashing down with rain. It was horrific. So we ended up having to move studio back inside again because the weather was so bad. And like he was running around with the Glasgow Warriors. subsuit on. He was drying his overshirt on the radiator in the changing room. Man, the guy's off the charts. Like he's
Andy was hungover as well, definitely.
Does
Because
he
he
work
drank
for
about
Glasgow?
11 pints in an hour, like the night before.
Is that right? Johnny works for Glasgow?
He's got a job. He's got some sort of working role there,
Yeah.
Part-time.
Loose one.
Yeah.
Stevie, how are you, mate? Because, I mean, you start off the pod like you've been ill again. You ill again?
No, I'm not ill. I'm not ill, but I was in London last night. Went on a little tour of old London, visited a few pubs, which was class. Yeah, I found out something that I didn't know. Maybe you guys are a little bit better educated than me. Do you know where the saying "money for old rope" comes from? John, you're intelligent.
Money from what?
Money for old rope.
No.
No. Well, so we were going on this tour, and the last hanging in London happened in like 1840 or something. It was some Irish guy, and there was 30,000 people turned up for this hanging, this public hanging, and the hangman cuts the rope afterwards and sells bits of rope. So he got money for old rope, and that's where the saying comes from. So, any listeners, there you are. You're welcome. You've learned something new today. So, yeah, we visited a couple of pubs. It's a good night out. Got back. Who was hosting? Big Bob Skinstad. Big Bobby Skinstad
Of course
was there.
he was.
He was there. Andrew Mertens was there. He was in fine fiddle. So he was. Yeah, Hugo Monya was there. He rocked up on his Nike Air Max Classic trainers and his pair of tracksuit bottoms and baseball cap. Yeah, he was into it. So no, it was a good night. Finished off with a lovely steak, a gaucho. So yeah, flew back this morning just in time to get onto the pod and chat to you boys. But anyway, enough about what we've been up to over the last couple of days. Boys, let's talk about the rugby that we watched last weekend. 4 quarterfinals. We'll kick off Munster 23, Ospreys 7. Shanks, will come to you first because we talked about the Ospreys having a bit of a free hit, and the free hit might have been right, but they didn't really make too many hits themselves and unfortunately come up a bit short, didn't they?
What I will say, boys, is those quarterfinals, I reckon the level of intensity and physicality has gone up like 10%. It was super physical. All 4 games were huge. And you're right, Stevie. I mean, the Ospreys had enough ball and they scored a nice try, which was Keelan Giles. It was a real nice play from Owen Watkin there, a little slip of the ball. And that came out obviously after the Simon Zebo try. He's got some pace for his age, mind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know whether it's flat out, after sort of 40, 50 meters, but acceleration, oosh, he's got it. But for me, the Ospreys didn't really do enough with the ball. We've seen that really all season. I thought the defense from Munster was epic. It was really good. And especially, I think, just before half-time. I think that defensive shift it might have been 8 to 10 minutes. That's probably the best passage of play and the best possession the Ospreys have had. And I know they gave away penalties and the Ospreys went to the line out. I think the honest decision was taking that scrum. I still think maybe points would have been a better option for them. They had opportunities, but I mean, it was huge from Munster. I thought, that period just to hold them out. And from then on in, for me, they didn't really look like losing that game at all. It seemed pretty comfortable, but a really good hit out for them as a quarterfinal. Not too difficult, but difficult enough to get them up for the next week.
Yeah, it was sort of a game. We were in studio covering that game, and we almost felt like a little bit disappointed in the end because Munster just were playing cup rugby, keeping the scoreboard ticking over, and they'll be delighted with the win. But we almost felt that there was more in the tank from Ospreys, but Munster just negated everything. And something that you have talked about all season long is how strong the Ospreys scrum has been, Shanks. Yeah. And if anything, the Munster scrum probably got the dominance as the game went on. And yeah, once they didn't have an in there, they really struggled to get into the game. But yeah, physical Ospreys really really put it in terms of getting
It was
off
a good
the
shift
line,
by
putting
him,
in
wasn't it?
hits.
They didn't let themselves down.
Yeah, defensively it was. Yeah, defensively it
Yeah.
was. I just thought they attacked too deep. But Munster keep rolling on. What's that, 10 or 11 wins now on the bounce?
Yeah, I think so. 12 penalties as well for the Ospreys, which showed you sort of discipline was a bit of an issue for them. They're under a lot of pressure. But I don't know, like I am impressed by Munster again. Yeah. I just think the way they're retaining the ball now is next level from, I think, last year and certainly the year before. I think they've evolved massively, hugely as a team.
John, just a question, John, for you on Munster. Do you think playing against Glasgow next weekend, their last couple of performances, Ulster and the Ospreys they're going to have to up it a couple of levels, like, because Ospreys, it just felt like they didn't have to click it into another gear?
Yeah, it did. I mean, you watched the game and it didn't feel like they got out of third gear, really. If you're honest, they looked comfortable, they looked organised. I think Graham Roundtree just said, "It's job done here." That was it. Get on to the semi-finals. So I would say they'll have to up it, because I think Glasgow were good in a pretty average game with the conditions. But these two teams hate each other, and they've not played each other as much as they used to. It goes back historically to when Ryan was there and to all the guys. It goes back to the Scotland-Irish stuff from years before with O'Gara and stuff. So there'll be this is the big one this weekend that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be a belter. We didn't really give Benetton much of a chance, lads, against the Bulls. No. And oh my God, they give them a fright. What a game of rugby. Both sides not defending particularly well, conceding yards with nearly every single carry that was made from both sides. But geez, Benetton are a side now that just hang in the fight, don't they?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think they might be my dark horses for next year, because I just think they just get better. And they've got confidence. They've got quality backline. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. It's basically the Italian side, plus a few extras like Rhino Smith. But I thought they were good. And obviously they dropped that ball just before halftime. Garbisi dropped it with the line inside. You're thinking, yeah, it's too simple to say, they scored that, they win the game. But yeah, you're right, Stevie. In terms of the defense was pretty substandard, but I think that's what you get after you're doing is just more space, more freedom, more tired bodies, and then too good a sacking side so you can pick them off.
I tell you, Leinster will be sort of quite happy with that Bulls performance, because that defensive line, Benetton were able to narrow it pretty easily and get on the outside, just by going through phase play. And Benetton's phase play is really good. It's up there with, I think, some of the best in this league. They've really, really improved hugely in that. Like, I was watching thinking, like, if Leinster can get their phase play attack, they're going to get a lot of gain out of that Bulls defence. I tell you where they are going to be dangerous. Well, maybe not as much, because massive news is that Moody and Curtly Aronson are out for them.
Yeah.
Which are two of their biggest players, because that transition from defence to attack, I think, is huge for the Bulls. They're just able to switch on. I remember watching them against the Dragons, and they just were able to just flick it like a switch. They did the same against Benetton, but I mean, it's mouth-watering, isn't it? These fixtures coming up now. Excuse the pun.
Is Van Staden back? Is he back in the mix again? He was injured in the last game, I think. So yeah, he'll be welcome back. They have a couple of
Huson makes a massive
injuries.
difference, by the way. Huson makes a huge difference.
Huson makes a big difference. Yeah. Van Staden looks like he is going to be back. Coetzee, I think, still out injured. Elric Lowe, who's the other? Hanekom, the number 8. So there's plenty of lads there. I just feel that the Bulls probably pitched up to that game. Lads, we've all been there when you're almost guaranteed a victory before you even step onto the pitch, and probably
like playing Scotland. I play in Scotland. I get it. I get it.
Get it early, mate, because that's fucking Wales now, pal. Let's get 5 points and go home.
Not when I play.
The Shags down there.
Not when I play
this weekend, guys. We're playing Wales. Go on, have a game.
We'll rotate the squad this week. Why? Oh, we've got Wales.
Peter Horn,
Get your nan to play.
I just think the Bulls maybe mentally just weren't at it. And a bit like Munster, if they had to switch it into another gear, they probably could. But for me, the game of the weekend, lads, was Leinster versus Ulster, 43 points to 20. I'm not sure that the scoreboard reflects the output from more so Ulster, of course, but fantastic game, running rugby, unbelievable tries, like some tries for the highlight reels, individuals playing off the charts rugby. And yeah, I was really impressed with Ulster, how they stuck into it, and 17-0 down, they managed to claw back a little bit, and they'll be proud of their efforts. But just from a neutral, lads, what was your take on the game?
Wasn't the game of the weekend, mate. Leinster didn't look like losing that at all. So I don't know why you're saying that. They went 17-0 up, and they ended up hammering them 43-20. The game of the weekend was a Bulls Benetton. I went down to the wire. This one was, I mean, Leinster. I think Ulster were good, but I don't think Leinster looked in any danger whatsoever of losing that game.
No, yeah. I tend to agree, but I also think like Ulster didn't do much wrong. Like the James Lowe try where he kicks it through, the other one where Prendergast, like there was some crazy tries. I think I was particularly impressed with Ulster's attack and their physicality. I think they probably lacked both those things. Yeah, the game opened up a little bit at the end, but I thought Ulster, and I think I said it in the show afterwards, like that's something to be sort of building upon next year. Whereas if you'd asked them a couple of months ago, they had nothing to build on at that point. They were all at sea in every element of the game. And I think they lost Izuchukwu early, and they've got in him someone who can be someone to almost build a pack around now. So, yeah, scoreline was
I agree, John. I agree. I felt like Ulster let them off the hook early on in the game. Didn't they get held up twice over the line? A couple of big line breaks. I think it was Izuchukwu went through, gave the ball to Matty Ray. He went to offload to John Cooney. And
wow.
It was almost accidental that, was it James Ryan's arm? He just kind of like flung it round and knocked the ball on. They had Leinster on the ropes, and it felt like if they had to get into a 7-10 point lead early on in that game, that Leinster might not have got that little bit of fortune with a few of the kicks that went through, half missed tackles, and before you know it, you're standing on your own post because Jamie Osborne's made an unbelievable break. So, like, credit where it's due, Leinster were clinical, they were, but I feel that Ulster, put in a really, really good effort, really good performance, and as you say, John, they can build on that for next year. But yeah.
Turning point in the game was when they went to the corner before half time, and Caelan Doris should have been put in the sin bin.
No, it was a yellow card all day long.
And that was crazy. And I think that I don't think that would have changed the outcome of the game, but I think it would have made it closer. Because
Jamie Osborne, when he made that break through, they were trying that phase play all game really, and I think about 2 minutes before they did that, he made a bit of a half break. This time he goes through. Like, for me, just Stuart Moore has to nail him. Like, that's your job. Like, he doesn't give the pass inside to Jameson Gibson Park, which he should have blatantly given it to him. But he rides through that tackle and then is able to offload to Robbie Henshaw. Like, that's your job as a 15 is to nail those people. So you take them out of the game. Like, there's little things like this which change games. You're right with his Izuchukwu break. He made something similar, didn't he, against Munster the week before? I think they came away with a try. But yeah, it might have been James Ryan. Mate, that was a phenomenal piece of skill, that to knock the ball down. He knew exactly what he's doing. He stopped the pass. But that's what the games are made of, aren't they? Moments like that.
Yeah, well, Leinster are on their travels. I was chatting to a couple of guys last night. I think Leinster actually have got over to South Africa pretty quickly. I think most of the guys were there on Tuesday, so hopefully they can get a bit of training done over the next few days and give the Bulls a bit of a pasting at the weekend. Let's hope so. Glasgow 27, Stormers 10. We were talking about the Stormers coming into this game, lots of quality on the pitch, and it was going to be a running game, and then all of a sudden the weather sort of came in, the wind was blowing 30 mile an hour down the pitch. The rest of my hair nearly ended up in the south stand, as John Barkley said pre-match. But yeah, it was a bit of a mental game in the first half. Neither team, John, could get into it, could they?
Nah, like Stormers were all right, but both teams played better into the win, bizarrely. Then against Sione Scottish run for the try for Cancellieri try was probably the difference, because Stormers could and should have won that game, but Manny Labok missed 10 points off the tee, 10 kickable points, like not even close with them.
No.
And they missed Valença, they missed Ruiz, they missed a bit of quality, because it kind of just summed up their season for me. They're good in parts, but pretty clunky and pretty careless with the ball. And the last try, kind of, John Dobson wasn't happy with that. I know that because he told me it was a shame.
I mean, the game was gone then, mind.
But kick the ball off then.
80 minutes, they're 10-0 down. He's got to try that at least. I think. I wonder. They look really good Glasgow looked really good in attack and defence as well. But I think that there was a bit of a dip towards the end of the season, I think, in Glasgow's form. But I mean, be it was a game of all 4 seasons. You had 4 seasons in one during that game. I think that was a game where I think we sort of stood up and thought, well, actually, these guys are back. This was a quality performance by them. There's a couple of opportunities, though, I just think they're going to have to nail, like clear ones as well, I thought, like the George Horn drop off the line out, which they stole. The Hugh Jones, when he breaks the line, doesn't link. But I tell you that the biggest thing for me was how they managed to score straight away after Storm has scored, got themselves right back into it. So you sort of take the confidence and momentum away from a team. So Cancellieri scored straight after Paul de Vet, I think, or Ben Loader. I can't remember. It was Ben Loader try. Henko Venter scored straight after Paul de Vet. So when they're going down by points, they manage to just switch momentum straight away and get themselves back into it. But I was very impressed from Glasgow, because they had a great start to the season, a pretty good middle, but I just think over the last few weeks, maybe they've just dipped slightly. But it was a great effort in those conditions, Stevie, because it was horrendous, wasn't it? It was horrendous.
It was horrendous. I think chatting to John Dobson after the game, and what a character he is, as you know, Shanks. But he sort of said when we're back to 13-10, he was like, "All right, we're going to kick on and win this." Like, he had no doubts that they were just going to kick on. And I think, as you say, as soon as they went 13-10, they give away a cheap penalty at the scrum. Then, they went up the pitch, another cheap penalty into the corner. And at that moment, it just felt like all the gas had been taken out of the Stormers. That like they felt like they were going to kick on, and then they just were sucker punched straight away. So, John Dodson was furious about that last try. And the reason for that is because I think he felt it was a little bit embarrassing, at the scoreline. You don't want to add another 7 points to a scoreline in a quarterfinal. I know you got to try something, but maybe that wasn't the time for it. But they're going to be better next year. The players that they're going to have back, Dion Ferry, Stephen Kitsoff re-signing with the Stormers, Evan Ruas, get him fit, playing a number of games. The Davids as well in the wing. So they have a lot of guys and a lot of quality to come back into the squad.
I still think Warren Gallant, even though I think he scored one of the tries of the campaign when he did the dummy, went around the outside, he's still, I think, a little bit of a liability. Like I think 100%. I think it might have been after the Ben Loader try, he drops the ball. And that's how they end up turning it over.
He tries to run one back, and then I think he kicks it, and then gets the ball back, and then tries another.
Even some of his kicks are a little bit iffy. They're not pinned. They sort of come off the boot a bit like Hugo Southwell's used to come off the boot when he was kicking.
The spiral shank. The spiral shank.
It used to be like some of them used to be like Ronaldo free kicks. They'd be dipping. Like power, just be like Why are you laughing, John? You know it's true.
I know it's true. I'm just laughing. Hugo, one of those guys, when what the players that he'd put in like an average kick, and some of them trying to catch eye contact because they want you to say, "Oh, good kick, mate." And not every time. I never used to say anything because that's all he did.
There was never airtime in him. He just sort of come off, and it's like a heavy ball. They play with a 5 kg ball.
Yeah, those weighted rugby balls used for passing drills. Oh, class.
Oh,
Boys, we'll keep on moving. Before we get to the Tom Shanklin interview that he did yesterday with Ross Hamilton, have you any rants of the week? Anything that's annoyed you this week?
Yeah.
Yeah. You going ahead, Shanks?
Just that you two on the piss, and that's why I had to do an interview yesterday because neither of you wanted to do.
I could have done it yesterday.
I had to cancel like school pickup and everything to do this interview because you boys were off enjoying yourselves.
Yeah, I'm working.
Well,
I felt like the run.
I was working as well. So that's not a particularly good rant. John,
this is your job, by the way.
Nah, I'm good, mate. I'm happy. I'm traveling. I'm in New York.
John, have you had some tramadol? Have you had some tramadol or something? I'm good, man. Yeah, man, I'm good.
I'm in the USA, man.
Yeah.
I don't have a rant either, actually.
Nah, semi-final, we lads. Just be happy.
No, we gotta stay positive. Ben, get on the job here. But Shanks yesterday, he had an interview. I'm looking forward to this, Shanks. 16 minutes long. You with the hangover. You were with Rugby Performance Analysis Ross Hamilton to get his insights into this weekend's games. We'll have a little look at those games after. So let's take a look.
Well, I'm delighted to be joined by our in-house stats guru, Ross Hamilton. Ross, some amazing games at the weekend, some great semi-finals coming up. Just a general question to start with. The stats, because you are the stat man. What makes it interesting about this weekend? Especially, I suppose, Bulls Leinster first up.
Yeah, there's a fair bit. I mean, some great games. I just saw a stat actually the other day that wasn't necessarily mine, but every home team in the Premiership, the URC, even the Super Rugby has won the knockout stages so far. So no away team in those competitions have won anything. Obviously, that was the case. But I mean, you would say top 4 teams this season got their home quarterfinals, and then are now into the semi-finals. Perhaps the 4 best teams deserve to be here. 2 of those in Bulls Leinster. Some things I found particularly interesting about them. I had a look at their season-long stats just to see how they might typically play against each other. Obviously, Leinster team specifically chops and changes a fair bit, but their style still remains fairly similar. However, for Bulls and Leinster, they seem to go about things in a slightly different way to start with, and yet they get the same output at the end of it. And I'll take you through a few things. One of them at the very start is we have a look at their scoring profile, so where teams and when teams score their points throughout the game, and have a look at points difference. So the aggregate scores that they get within each quarter of the game in this case. So you can see here for Bulls that they start really strong, and yet they drop off throughout the game. That might be because they've already won the game and they're just cruising at that stage, fine. But if they do that in this game versus Leinster, as we can see, gets stronger and stronger every quarter as the game goes on. So they might have the power to come back into it, especially if Bulls can't sort of flip that switch and actually play for the 80 minutes. So that's the first thing, something to look out for. We might see Bulls go ahead at the start, fine, but obviously don't write off Leinster, so they can certainly come back into it later on. And then the second part is where they score their tries from, as in where do they originate from when they score a try. Now, we can have a look at different ranges inside the 22 and outside the 22 for the Bulls. Now, they can both teams are obviously top quality teams in the semi-final, of course, so they can both do both things, but it's just a tendency of which they prefer. Bulls score the most tries that start outside the 22. So if Leinster give a loose kick, turnovers, anything like that, even set piece, Bulls are very willing to start and play from further away, and then they'll get through, they'll score tries off of the back of that. Leinster typically want to start once in their 22. In fact, only Glasgow score more tries from starting in the 22. So you look for Leinster to kick into the Bulls territory first, even kick penalties into the 22, then launch from lineouts and those sort of things. But just the 2 differing styles there of how those teams start it all off.
Does that tell us that maybe Leinster are a little bit more structured than, say, the Bulls would be, and the Bulls maybe rely a little bit on some of their counter-attack and some of their danger men out wide?
I think that's exactly it. Yeah, you're spot on. That Leinster very much want to build. Something I've looked at as well is that Bulls will score pretty quickly within their phases in their try possession, but Leinster are actually happy to build, which is not something we've seen so much from Leinster recent seasons, that they are quick strike sort of team, but they're happy to slow it down and make sure they score. But that's sort of the point being their output. However they go about it, both of the teams at the start, they both end up with some sort of crazy numbers in attack. So I had a look at their attack stats. And the big one that starts off for me is Bulls have actually very little carries within their possessions. They're just 13th in the competition, obviously out of 16 for carries, and Leinster third. However, this sort of looks to your point, Shanks, that they are so quick and threatening and dangerous with whatever possession they have that they still get really high total numbers. So as we go across these, Leinster do the same, but as we go across both of them, really high meters, line breaks, gain line success, Bulls are second best of anybody. Turnovers conceded is something that's interesting. I'll come on to that a little bit for Leinster, that they make very few errors and therefore are incredibly efficient with their possession. That's Bulls in this case. Leinster aren't so. They're actually willing to make mistakes and make errors, and that's the risk that comes with the reward of their output. And then if we just sort of finish that off, you then just sort of go into red zone entries of where you get into the opposition 22. Leinster obviously really strong where they score their tries from there. But then the efficiency, and that's the number. That's the thing that every team is going for. When you get into those areas, how well you take your opportunities. Bulls are the best of anybody. Leinster second best, a little bit behind, but Bulls sort of comfortably far and away the best. And then if you just see, that's what then translates into the two teams who have scored the most tries and points. So yes, while they go about things slightly differently, and we can see, as you're saying, a counter-attacking, open, free-flowing Bulls and maybe a more structured Leinster, they both score incredibly well and score a lot of tries and points. So however they do it, we'll still see a lot of tries, I think, in an amazing game.
I think one of the Bulls' strength is their transition from either defence into attack, and how many tries they score. Now, they are without Curtly Aronson and Keenan Moody. How much of a loss do you think that will be to the Bulls? Because there's no doubt they are two of their biggest danger men. And who should we look out for maybe in that Bulls team?
Yeah, no doubt, two world-class players, South African World Cup winners, of course. So everyone's going to be missed. But yeah, they do actually have a lot of other players who come to the fore. And something I looked at, whilst Leinster, of course, rotate their team quite a lot, they don't get a chance to build their stats across the season. So very few of Leinster players have any stats sort of anywhere near the top 20, top 25. However, the Bulls don't. They do have a lot of players who contribute. So Johan Goosen, for example, the fly half, scored the second most points this season behind Ben Healy. So off the tee, somebody to look out for. He's been very strong. Curtly Aronson and Keenan Moody do feature in the top 5 tries scored for the competition, but Bulls actually have 4 of the top 5 try scores. Only Johnny Matthews does better from Glasgow, but they also then have 5 players in the top 10. So you take away Curtly Aronson and Keenan Moody, they've still got 3 guys who are scoring tries for fun across the competition who are going to be threatening. Aka van der Merwe, one of them, obviously a hooker. So, excuse me, a lot of tries off of the back of mauls, those sort of things. And then some of the other ones, perhaps we might not see not so groundbreaking, not so highlight reel kind of stats, but try assists. So Ambrose Papier has the most try assists in the competition of any player. He's assisted 11 tries in the tournament this year. So again, you can look out for him around the base, around the breakdown, sort of facilitating those tries to his other players. And then looking at sort of contact meters, Eric Lowe has made a lot of carries this season. I think he was 5th total carries, but then he's made the most contact meters. So that's the most meters at the point or beyond that initial contact that we make once they're carrying into defenders. So 314 meters is a huge amount of meters to be making past that contact zone, the most of anyone. And then another player as well, who perhaps might not know so highly or know so well, Cameron Hanacom, made 24 offloads this season, second most of anybody. So, you know, you look out for those kind of players, even without the superstars that they might have lost, they've still got players there that are going to threaten.
You mentioned at the start about the home advantage and how key it is. And I think that's the beauty of the league, is that you really try and work and try and get that home advantage all the way through to the final. Now, two really tough teams are going head to head in the Bulls and Leinster. Do you think it's just going to come down to red zone efficiency? Because both teams are definitely going to get into the 22, and it's who comes away with that higher ratio.
Yeah, one of the things I looked at, and we can see in the stats at the start, is they score almost exactly the same amount of tries. I think Bulls have scored one more try over the course of the whole season, 88 to 87. However, they average 4 more points per game than Leinster. And Leinster is second, so obviously they're incredible. But that might be the difference, that their kicks for goal could be the separating factor between them. I actually had a look at this, and the Bulls have made 38 kicks at goal. That's the second most of any team. Leinster had made 10 all season. That's 10 attempts all season. They've actually only kicked 8. So yes, of course, their priority is to kick into the 22 and launch from the lineouts, and that's fine. And we've talked about that. And that gets them more tries than not. However, Bulls also score that amount of tries and they get the points. So if that's the difference, both teams are going to be frightening in the red zone. They're going to take their chances. They're going to have lots of them, sure. But it might even come down to those kicks from outside the 22, kick for posts, that Leinster haven't been taking this season. And when you're coming up against a team at this level, at this point of the season in a semi-final, those fine margins could be the difference.
I mean, before the weekend, with Aronson and Moody injured, I would look at this game and I would fancy the Bulls. But because of those injuries and because of how big those two players are for them, I just wonder now whether Leinster might be able to do it away. Where do you think, and who do you think is going to win?
That's obviously huge. Those two players especially missing. I touched on this at the start, that a lot of these stats are season-wide stats for Leinster, and a lot of their players get rotated. You're now thinking, of course, this is frontline Leinster. So when we can apply these stats to their season team, they might be even further beyond these kind of stats now. So I think if we're talking about home advantage is so huge, which team might have the best chance of overcoming that? I think this Leinster team might. And I think with everything that's gone on, sort of losing everything else, but having the Champions Cup at the start of this, I think is huge. So, okay, fine, they lost that. That's a disappointment. But now they've only got the URC to focus on. I think that's a big factor. So I actually do think, despite perhaps what the stats might say, that Leinster could come away with this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, look, that's the first of the big games this weekend. The second one is Munster Glasgow. I mean, just as big in different ways. Take us through some of the attacking stats of both those teams, Ross.
Yeah, different ways in terms of how these two teams play as well, is that now they start and their style is actually very similar, but their output is different. So perhaps sort of opposite to Bulls Leinster. And the first thing to show you and how that translates is their possession time. So these two teams have the most possession time in the competition this season, but it's why they have that differs. So if I take you across the attack stats for Munster at the top, whilst they have a lot of possession time and actually quite a lot of carries, their output is pretty average at best. I mean, there's 16 teams in the league, so they're 7th for meters, 11th for line breaks, 12th for defenders beaten. That one is, even just 8th for average ruck speed and red zone entries. So they don't necessarily use that possession time for their own benefit in attack. You can't say that for Glasgow. They definitely do that. Average the most possession time, get the most carries, second most meters of anybody, the most line breaks, most defenders beaten. They have the fastest average ruck speed and the most red zone entries. To be like that level across so many of those stats is so impressive. You've got teams like Bulls and Leinster in this, and yet you're still number one in so many of those. That's really, really impressive. But that's the thing, is that Glasgow want to keep the ball for their own benefit and attack and really stress defenses. Munster actually aren't too bothered about what they get in attack. It's what they limit their opposition in defence. So that's the next thing that I looked at then, and how they sort of look quite similar in defence. Now, the other thing to mention at this point is Glasgow have a fantastic defence as well. And I'll come on to that and potentially what that might mean. But if you look here for Munster, so they do miss a few tackles, and their tackle success isn't fantastic, while still great. But it's what they limit their opposition. So if we jump to meters conceded, they're the second best in that regard. Third best in breaks conceded. They concede the fewest offloads. So they just want to restrict the opposition as much as possible by keeping the ball themselves. That then translates into their red zone efficiency. They're the second best. The only team better is Glasgow. And again, we look at sort of points and tries conceded, which is obviously the ultimate of your defence. And they're the best two teams at that, one of each for tries and points conceded. So Glasgow also have that element. They also have that defence. And that's actually the thing I imagine you might ask me of who's going to win this one. So I'll jump straight ahead. I feel Glasgow have the attack that are going to stress Munster more than they've been stressed before. They'll want to keep the ball fine and they limit their opposition so much. But when you've got a team who's actually the very best at getting possession and doing so much with it, I think Munster's defence will be so stressed that they've never seen before this season. And that will be the difference factor because Glasgow have the defence and they have the attack. I think they're going to stress Munster's style just a little bit too much. So although I just said that perhaps Leinster were the only ones who could overcome the sort of home game voodoo, but I arguably think Glasgow could do the same here.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Glasgow at the weekend. I felt they slightly dipped a little bit in form, and I think this weekend we're going to see an amazing attack versus an amazing defence, and it's going to be who buckles first. Do you think there might be a bit too much power that Munster possess? They're a little bit more pragmatic than Glasgow, but the size of their pack, their set piece, is it going to be a case of two mauls collide?
Maybe, and obviously that's what Munster want from this. They'll want to keep it tight and keep it all up front, perhaps, so that they can force a way over. And if they get their way, it's probably going to be a close, perhaps low-scoring affair. Whereas if Glasgow get the upper hand, then they could take it away. But that's certainly how the quarterfinals went as well. I had a quick look at that. But Munster did exactly what we sort of suggested they do all season. They had really high possession time. They only made 2 line breaks themselves, but they limited Ospreys to just 4. They then limited Ospreys to 4 red zone entries only, and actually the lowest red zone efficiency of the quarterfinals. So that style just worked perfectly for them at that point. However, will it work again is my point against Glasgow, because Glasgow in the quarterfinals had huge possession time as well. They made 10 line breaks, 27 defenders beaten. Their red zone efficiency was 4.2. It is the second best of the round of the quarterfinals. Leinster only just slightly pipping them there. So it's just whether if Glasgow can get their attack going, I feel that they can stress Munster far more than Munster going to stress Glasgow. But as you're saying, if Munster can get it into an arm wrestle, then that may be the answer. And the home advantage may help them with that. So we'll wait and see.
I mean, look, it's going to be an amazing weekend of semi-finals. Ross, you've got me all excited, which is quite hard to do at my age. So thank you very much for that. I hope the games live up to all the stats that we've gone through. And thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much.
Wake up, John.
I'm ready, mate. I'm good.
He's ready to go.
He's primed.
Shanks. You had bad throat, did you?
Yeah, husky.
And a crisp
Marlboro Red,
in the back of my throat.
Lucky strike, eh? You on those?
Not me, lads. Not me. Too busy singing.
Very good. Shanks, with all those stats, and I was sort of running it through in my head, just listening through, and it's interesting to hear that Ross is it feels like he's going for a Leinster win, and it feels like he's going for a Glasgow win. That's what I sort of felt out of it. He feels like Glasgow's going to be too much for Munster just with their attack, and Leinster just with the way they grow into games, that they're going to have a bit too much at the back end. So, lads, what's your thoughts? JB, we'll start with you just on the Bulls Leinster game. That's the first one up on Saturday afternoon.
I think it's too tight to call. I really do. I think I'm going to back. If I'm going to choose one, I'm backing the Bulls at home. I think it'll be a rammy at the stadium. There'll be a big crowd, semi-final, loads of power. And Leinster were obviously over there a couple of weeks ago. I know it wasn't their starting team, but they got hammered playing altitude. So they'll have to bring a different side. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I hope the Bulls can do it.
I think, I know we've mentioned this loads about players like Curtly Arnason, but for me, it's the same with like Edinburgh, John, with Darcy Graham. Like, they make a massive difference to your team.
Yeah,
They make a huge difference. Kane and Moody as well. If there's a team that can beat the Bulls away from home, it's Leinster or Munster, I think.
Yeah.
I just think that they're huge losses for the amount of tries they score and what they do in the game. So
and the game.
I'm going Leinster.
You're going Leinster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go Leinster as well. I think the game against Ulster the ball was in play for a long time. Some players made huge contributions. Big Joe McCarthy, man of the match. I think it was 11 carries, 30 or 40 meters gained. Josh van der Fleer, 20 odd tackles made. Like, that was a really, really good hit out, and they're going to be stressed in this game as well. So I think that'll serve them well in this match, and I can only see a Leinster win. Yes,
I just want to say, when I predicted the quarter, semis, and finals, I went with the Bulls, but that was because of assuming everyone was fit. I think Aaron and Sir Moody fit. I'm going Bulls, all right, but they're not, so I'm going Leinster. You're allowed to change your mind because it's a free country. We're not in America now, John.
Munster Glasgow. I don't know. Like, for some reason, after that game at the weekend where they convincingly beat the Stormers at home, they showed a lot of character. They had lots of aggression. Like, we were standing in front of the boys when they trotted off at the end of the game, and like, they're a big side, they're a powerful side. They've got good counter attack. They play with width. They've got a good maul. There aren't too many weaknesses in this Glasgow side, and they're going to have an unbelievable game against Munster to win in Thomond Park. Will Munster be able to fill the stadium, get 27,000 or whatever it is there? I think they need that. I think they need every voice to get behind them and support them, because it's not going to be easy. A couple of question marks over some of their players. Nankerville injured a couple of weeks ago against Edinburgh. John and I were at that game. He's been a massive loss. So hopefully he can make it back into the centre partnership with Frisch. And yeah, Peter O'Mahony, I know that's been a talking point this week, and maybe get your opinions on that as well. He was brought off early in the Ulster game, brought off really early in the last game, as was RG Snyman. So yeah, it just feels like, it's weird saying this, even though that Munster have won 10 games on the spin, that the Glasgow look like they have a bit more confidence or something in their game at the minute.
They definitely needed it though, because they were pretty dark, I think. After
Sorry,
that.
are you eating, John? Are you eating on a podcast? Because that's a big no-no for me.
You get your lozenge and you help you throw it out, big guy. You're still a bit hoarse from last week.
Oh, you big guy me, have you?
Yeah, go on, big guy. Hey, big guy. How did that feel?
Big guy.
Hey, big guy. I don't know what the question was anymore. What was the question?
Just on Glasgow. Do you reckon they have the confidence out of the Stormers game to go to Thomond Park and get a result? Do you think deep down they believe that they're good enough to win a semi-final away from home?
100%. 100%. I think they dropped a little bit on that trip, and that Lions game would have been a pretty damaging one for the mentality of the group. But we were there. You could tell that the body language, the intensity of how they played, and that will only go up when they go to Munster. Like, these are two teams that don't like playing against. They love playing against each other because they don't like each other. So, yeah, I think they'll be full guns blazing. They've got Richie Gray back, which makes a difference. George Turner's back and fit on the bench. They've pretty much got a full squad to pick from. So the only one maybe missing is Stafford McDowell, who apparently had a horrendous cut in his hand, but they had Hugh Jones and Tuipulotu back together. So yeah, I'm going for a Glasgow win, Stevie.
The only thing I can think of, Stevie and John, is maybe they go for the killer blow all the time. Maybe they might overplay a little bit too much, and that might go into Munster's hands. Maybe. I mean, they're a team that run it from everywhere, don't they? Like, even when it's 80 minutes on the clock, Franco Smith wants them to go for it. I just wonder whether or not they can play knockout rugby, which might be just slowing things down, going for points. They don't often kick for goal. You know, they get a penalty, they'll go for the corner, they'll try and maul it, and they got a lot of success from that. But against this Munster team, who've sorted out their line-out maul ever since they played them in December, I don't know. I wonder if they'll go in with a slightly different mentality of, right, this is knockout rugby. We take points on offer. That's the only thing I can think of with them.
They did sort of do that last weekend, though, Shanks. And there did seem to be a little bit more
a little bit, but
pragmatic approach. I know exactly what you're saying, but when you have some of the players on the pitch like Cancellieri and Tupolatu and Hugh Jones, like, you want to get the ball into their hands. You just don't want to be getting a penalty, kicking it down the line, try and get another penalty, take your 3 points. Like, before you know it, you're 15, 20 minutes into a game and you haven't touched the ball yet. So, like, I think it's really important that Glasgow continue in the same vein. And Franco Smith, I think he said after the game, John, that at half time he sort of said to the guys about a couple of things that he didn't particularly like, and that they'd sort of drifted away from the game plan, and that they had to get back to that straight away in the second half, and they did. So he's the type of guy that will have a game plan in place. Maybe that is Shanks. Maybe that game plan is to be a bit more pragmatic, to keep the scoreboard ticking, to milk more penalties. He will have something in place to beat this Munster side. Will Munster have something in place to beat Glasgow? Of course they're going to have some sort of game plan. But it just, I don't know. It just feels like Glasgow for me are in a little bit of a more confident way of playing, and everybody looks comfortable on the ball, where Munster just feel like they're a bit sluggish, stop-start. But again, I feel like they have another couple of levels in them. So it's going to be a cracker. It's going to be
who you picking?
Oh, I am leaning towards Glasgow. Like, I am leaning towards Glasgow.
Oh, Ross has done a job on you, mate. Ross has done a proper job on you.
Yeah.
He's a hypnotist part-time, does like Butlins.
Look into my eyes,
exactly.
not wrong my eyes, into my eyes.
Exactly.
I would love to see a Leinster-Munster final. Of course I would. All-Irish final. I would. So I'm going to go for Leinster to win and Glasgow to win. How's that?
Munster, I'm going for.
Leinster-Munster, JB?
I'm going for Bulls Glasgow.
Oh. Dublin studio. That's a result.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah, game of golf at the K Club, lads, on the Friday. Sound good?
That's the plan.
Dream.
That's the plan.
I'll go for that as well.
Well, we'll let John finish off his lunch in peace in New York. Stay safe, John. Shanks, thanks for your time. As always, look forward to catching up with you boys at the weekend. 2 huge games, Bulls versus Leinster, Munster versus Glasgow, live on Premier Sports. Tune in, and we'll catch you next week.